Another edition of Behind the Lines presented by BetMGM Sportsbook and TheLines.com. I'm Eli Hershkovich, joined by BetMGM Sportsbook Trading Manager Christian Cipollini. How are we doing today, Christian?
Yeah, I'm doing good over here. The book is pretty happy after another big week.
Yeah, I don't know if public bettors feel the same way so far. Let's use the increment of $100 for your average bettor over at BetMGM. Public sides, so 50% of the bets, and maybe a little bit higher than that, have gone just 22, 38, and 2 against the spread. So that means an $100 bettor is down just under $1,800 so far through the first 4 weeks of the season. Anything stand out in that regard for week 4 sides?
Yeah, I mean, for the past 4 weeks have been pretty great results, pretty much all the book could ask for. We've had a lot of dogs win, a lot of low-scoring under games, kind of what we touched on last week. And that trend continue into this week as well. The Broncos beating the Jets was a great outcome for the book. The really only bad outcome that we did have was last night, and that was Seahawks-Lions, where we had majority of our money on the Lions. But outside of that, we pretty much got almost every outcome we could have wanted. That Ravens-Bills game was our most bet-on game of the season so far. But majority of our money came on the Bills, so we were happy that the Ravens won that one pretty easy.
Yeah, we'll touch on Baltimore later on in the show. But kicking off with Thursday Night Football, Christian, Atlanta over at BetMGM as we record this on the 1st of October, a 1.5-point favorite against the Buccaneers. Baker Mayfield continuing to excel without Dave Canales. I'm assuming the Bucs will be one of those public teams this week just because of their against the spread success rate, not only this season, but dating back to Mayfield's first year in Tampa Bay. And you look at one of the reasons why Mayfield has excelled so much, his snap to release average on Sunday and overall this season, according to Pro Football Focus, a league best 2.08 seconds per release. So how quickly he's getting rid of the football. Injuries on both sides of the ball that we'll touch on here in a moment, but where is the action going so far on Thursday night?
Yeah, a lot of times the action can reflect how they looked the week before. So the Bucs look pretty good. As you alluded to, well, we are taking more action on the Bucs in that line. That line was all the way up to 3 at one point, but now down to 1.5. So as of right now, it's more on the Bucs, and I think that trend will probably continue through the week.
Falcons benefited from some big defensive turnovers going back to week number 4 against the Saints, and we'll get to New Orleans when we touch on Monday Night Football with Kansas City against the Saints. But one of the big injuries that I alluded to, Bijan Robinson, seemingly going to play considering it is a short week, and he was limited, quote-unquote limited, with a hamstring injury on Monday's walkthrough. So not technically a practice session for the Falcons, but nonetheless limited. Only 1 touchdown on the season for Robinson. He's underperformed not only in the anytime touchdown market, but with his player props overall yardage on the ground and through the air. Had, I think, 40-plus yards through the air, though, against the Saints in week 4. Inefficient, though, on the ground. So anything of note with Bijan Robinson prop markets for the Thursday Night Football matchup?
Yeah, I mean, from what I'm looking at, bettors haven't taken that into account because majority, almost all of our action so far is on his over 66.5 rushing yards. And yeah, we still have pretty much over bets on majority of his props, so that hasn't sunk in yet. I would say as of now, it's probably a bit less action than we would normally have, but it is still all on over.
Right, and as you touch on every week, it's still a couple days before kickoff here as we record on Tuesday. Another team that has surprised, but in the more positive sense, I guess kind of like Tampa Bay, but still coming out of nowhere, especially when you consider their win total was in the 6.5 range preseason. Minnesota down from 100-1 before week 1 to win the Super Bowl to 16-1. And Sam Darnold has seen his MVP odds dip to the 15-1 range. So before we get into the London matchup with Minnesota against the Jets, how much of your handle has shifted with the Vikings to win the Super Bowl and then also in the MVP market with Darnold?
Yeah, I mean, they are still one of our least bet on teams that we now kind of have in this range of, can win the Super Bowl. It's interesting from a bookmaker perspective is like, at what point do you start to give them respect of saying like, hey, now it's 4 weeks in, they've looked good all 4 weeks. Our preseason assessment of them was that they aren't going to be a competitive team. But everything they've shown for the first 4 weeks shows that they are. So it seems like in this instance, we're a little bit ahead of the bettors because we really didn't take as much action. Usually when a team does something like this, we'll have a ton of liability on that specific team just because, if they come in from 100 to 1 or whatever it is into 17 to 1, that racks our liability up. But we haven't really seen the bets come through as much. We have lowered them as we've seen them do well. The Sam Darnold MVP one is really fascinating too. That's a spot where we do have liability on Darnold. Some people called that one early. And again, he was, a massive underdog to even be in this conversation. So we're definitely hoping that he starts to fall out of that race.
I don't mean to put you on the spot here with this question, but what is your handle like for NFC futures in seemingly a wide open conference so far?
Yeah, it definitely is. It's pretty mixed. I mean, from the beginning of the season, we took a ton of 49ers action. We always kind of tend to take Cowboys action and a little bit of the Eagles as well. This season in particular, we've had a massive influx of Lions bets. So they're far and away our biggest liability. In general, we do tend to get a lot of Michigan bettors betting on the Lions and the fact that they've had a great season last year and looking really good this year. The entire preseason, we had nothing but Lions bets. So that's our biggest liability to fade.
Back to the Vikings, the Lions' NFC North rival. Minnesota, a 2.5-point favorite, and a pretty big shift off the look-ahead line, considering the Jets were around 3-point favorites when this line opened up in May. So Vikings against the Jets in London Sunday morning. Football with your breakfast, total of 40.5. The big thing that I've touched on throughout the first 4 weeks, and we saw it with the Saints, a bit of regression over the last couple weeks, despite maybe getting a bit unlucky against the Falcons in week 4. We've yet to see Minnesota face a negative game script. So as good as this coaching staff is with Kevin O'Connell and Brian Flores, the Vikings defensive coordinator, one of the best defensive coordinators over the last decade plus in the NFL, when I'm talking about Flores, Darnold has struggled when facing a negative game state. Hasn't played for the Vikings up until this season, but I am curious to see how he performs if the Vikings do get down against the Jets, considering New York has one of the league's best defenses as well. Low total, so the market taking that into account, and you guys as well when you open this game on Sunday night. Jets were crushed. You guys benefited, but Jets bettors didn't benefit from Sunday's result against the Broncos. Jets in survivor pools also getting ousted, and I'm sure New York was a very popular pick in that regard. So do you expect sharp bettors to swing back toward New York here against Minnesota when you look at the handle early in the week?
Yeah, so far early in the week, that has not happened. We've taken overwhelming Vikings bets at this point. I do expect that to probably come in and get a lot closer. We do have it, week on week, we always end up taking a lot of Jets bets, a lot of New York bets. So I do think that will eventually come, but the early action's been all over the Vikings.
Over to later on in the Sunday slate, early Sunday afternoon. You mentioned Lamar Jackson and the Ravens blitzing the Bills, not only at the line of scrimmage, but on the scoreboard and covering as just under 3-point favorites on Sunday Night Football. Lamar Jackson now 24-5 against the spread in the regular season. The best mark of any quarterback over the last 20 years when you look at qualified quarterbacks. So right around 282 signal callers to be exact, as a field goal favorite or less, or as an underdog. So Jackson historically profitable in that regard. And Baltimore, under the key number of 3, 2.5-point favorite at BetMGM against the lowly Bengals, at least when you look at records so far over the first 4 weeks of the season. High total. That has a lot to do with a poor Ravens pass defense and arguably one of the worst defenses in the league so far this season when I touch on Lou Anarumo's Bengals defense. What's the action like for this big AFC North clash in Cincinnati?
Yeah, so you touched on that key number. As of right now, we're taking majority Ravens bets. I do suspect that a lot of that is just because of the fact that it is at a 2.5. So a lot of times bettors, especially early bettors, will tend to try to grab that 2.5 just in case it does end up going to 3, because it can just end up being such a big swing. And they always love that closing line value. So I'd imagine that's why, and I also suspect if we do end up going to 3, that's when we'll start coming back and taking Bengals action. we'll see where it goes throughout the week. But yeah, right now it's all Ravens.
Cincinnati has been gashed on the ground so far, and the way Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson, and that Ravens read option rushing attack look could be another onslaught, at least defensively, for Cincinnati. But we have seen Baltimore's pass defense get exploited. Didn't happen against Buffalo, but they weren't able to play their style, which is running the football, at least since Kyle Brady took over as the Bills offensive coordinator dating back to last season. Over to Sunday Night Football, Cowboys at Steelers. Big injuries on both sides of the ball, similar to the Falcons and Saints matchup, I guess, or Falcons and Bucks matchup going back to Thursday Night Football. Dallas banged up on the defensive line. Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence both expected to miss this game in Pittsburgh. And then the Steelers' offensive line has undergone the biggest adjustment in a negative sense throughout the league. A ton of injuries. Pittsburgh, 2.5-point favorites, though, and the total being 43. Where do you see this line shifting over the course of the week? And it's one of the interesting questions, at least from a better standpoint, maybe not behind the counter, just because you have America's team in the Cowboys. You mentioned from the get-go that the Cowboys are always a popular pick to win the conference, if not win the Super Bowl. Steelers have been a popular pick among the public through the first 3 or 4 weeks. So two popular-ish teams on Sunday night, both dealing with significant injuries on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, so we're pretty mixed at this point. A lot of people seem to be taking the Cowboys on the money line, and then if you want the Steelers, they're taking them on the spread. So that's where our mix is right now. This is another one that I certainly expect to change as we get closer. I'd imagine by the end of this, we'll be overwhelming bets on the Cowboys. If some sharp action ends up taking us the Cowboys' way, maybe that line could get closer. I don't really anticipate it going up to 3, but we will see what happens. But if anything, I think it will end up going towards the Cowboys in this one.
As you all know by now, we've teamed up with BetMGM this season. We'll be using BetMGM lines to make all of our picks, and we'll have special offers for our listeners each week. If you haven't signed up with BetMGM yet, use promo code THELINES, that's the lines one word, and you will get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using bonus code THELINES. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game. You'll then receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your first bet loses. Just make sure to use bonus code THELINES when you sign up. See BetMGM.com for terms. 21 plus only. U.S. promotional offers not available in New York, Nevada, Ontario, or Puerto Rico. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Available in the U.S. Call 8778-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369 in New York. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP in Arizona. 1-800-327-5050 in Massachusetts, 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa, and 1-800-981-0023 in Puerto Rico. First bet offer for new customers only, subject to eligibility requirements. Rewards are non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire within 7 days. In partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. Don't forget, if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code THELINES and get your $1,500 first bet offer today.
Going back to week 4, Cowboys win straight up against the Giants, but fail to cover the closing number. Most books right around 5.5. I believe that's where BetMGM closed as well. How big of a swing was that for you guys when Aubrey missed the field goal with right around 30 seconds left in regulation?
Yeah, see, this is another one that we talk about, getting those numbers. People bet it earlier. People that bet it earlier might have been okay there, but pretty much all the late bettors, the ones betting on Thursday, taking the Cowboys there, that field goal certainly hurt. That ended up being a great outcome for the book, because that 5.5, it's just crazy. Sometimes when we say that 5.5 is in no man's land, and then of course it gets right there for it. So unfortunate for the bettors, but yeah, it was a pretty massive swing. One of two potential really big swings that we had. The other one being that Jags-Texans one. With the no safety at the end of the game. That was another 5.5-point spread where everyone was on the Texans, and that outcome also benefited the book. So two really unfortunate ones for the public.
Yeah, I had Jacksonville in that game. I had a +7 ticket from early in the week, and I took +6 on Sunday morning. I felt like my life was flashing before my eyes when Travis Etienne picked the ball up. Luckily, with officiating and how it's called in the NFL, it's quote-unquote forward progress, so where he picked up the ball before he was driven back. In that situation, novice bettors are probably thinking, okay, there's no chance that Houston covers this number. I'm thinking, where's the lateral going to go on the final play, and how am I going to lose my Jags bets here when Houston picks up the ball and scores a touchdown? So I definitely was breathing a sigh of relief when Jacksonville covered both of my bets. But any refund requests for you just because of how brain dead Mike McCarthy is going back to Cowboys and Giants?
I didn't personally see it. I didn't personally see any, but those requests don't come to me. I'm sure we had plenty of contacts asking for a refund.
Over to Monday Night Football. Chiefs, this is incredible. 16-12 straight up. Good for a 57% hit rate in games they've trailed by 10-plus points at any point since 2019. Now, since then, you have arguably, I think everyone would say, the best quarterback in the NFL in Patrick Mahomes. But Kansas City did it again. First half, granted, but still impressive nonetheless against the Chargers in Week 4. Kansas City, a 5.5-point favorite against the Saints. On Monday night, another game that's going to be impacted by injuries for both teams. Rashee Rice, the Chiefs' number one receiver, seemingly out with an ACL injury. Maybe the early prognosis was torn ACL, but now those reports have gone both ways early in the week ahead of this Week 5 matchup. On the flip side, according to NFL DVOA, the Saints are arguably one of the best teams, 2-2 team-wise, record-wise, over the first 4 games in the NFL ever. So New Orleans has gotten unlucky if we shift back to that Falcons game on Sunday, but the injury front could be big for them on the defensive side with Matthew and Willie Gay potentially missing this matchup. Total of 42.5, so low total considering how both teams could be impacted by this game. Where have you seen the action so far for the Monday night handle, just considering, again, for bettors looking for sharp action, it still is early in the week?
Yeah, so with the Chiefs, usually I don't have to look it up. Usually we're rooting against the Chiefs no matter what happens. But I did look into this one, of course, because I did consider, they do have a ton of injuries to skill position players, and Travis Kelce hasn't looked so good. So I was thinking maybe this could be one of the weeks where we start taking action on the other side, but that hasn't really happened as of yet. Still taking majority Chiefs bets. We'll see what happens come Monday. Maybe if there's a little more news. I would think in general we probably will get more Saints bets this week than we would have if Rice didn't get hurt. So that should be a significant injury, and it's probably reflected in that line too. I think it would be a little bit higher if he was available. And but yeah, as per usual, Chiefs money this week. Right,
no Pacheco, no Hollywood Brown, and then near 100% chance that Rice is out. We don't want to declare anything just because tests are still going on, and who knows in today's age of the NFL, Chiefs could also swing a deal before Monday Night Football, so have to take that into account too, or at the least before the NFL trade deadline, so that offense isn't going anywhere. What do you like on the NFL Week 5 card to wrap it up here, Christian? You had a loss with the Packers, but you did hit with the Chargers-Chiefs under, speaking of Kansas City. So anywhere you're looking so far in the NFL Week 5 card?
Yeah, so I'll have 2 that I'll like this week. I'll start with one that I don't generally like to do as a team on the road, but I do like the Bills this week against the Texans. I think they bounce back after getting a bit embarrassed on Sunday night. And at least for me, I don't think the Texans have looked nearly as good as I expected them to, or I think most people expected them to. I've read it, they're 3-1, but a lot of those were close games against teams that really they probably should have taken care of business, or you would have assumed they would. So I'll take the Bills on a bounce back at +1 here. And then the other one that I'll take this week, I'll actually stay in the same game, and I'll take that over in that game. Like I said, that Texans defense hasn't been as impressive as I thought it would be, and I think the Bills are going to come out scoring. So a higher total, but I'll go with the over there and the Bills.
Yet another injury that we haven't hit on, also haven't hit on the game until now. Joe Mixon, if he's back for Houston, that could boost Houston's rushing attack in a big way, just considering how inefficient Cam Akers has been over the last couple games. And that could play into the total theoretically going over, just because the Bills have had one of the worst rushing defenses in the NFL, not just going back to week 4 against the Ravens. So like your looks there for the early afternoon game, big one in the early slate, and also just overall in week 5 with Buffalo in Houston. That's going to do it for this edition of Behind the Lines, presented by BetMGM and TheLines.com. He is Christian Cipollini, trading manager over at BetMGM. Christian, always appreciate the time, man.
Yeah, thanks. Good luck to everyone this week.
Big thanks to Christian, and thanks for watching and listening to another edition of Behind the Lines. So long, everybody, and good luck with your NFL Week 5 picks.